You picked up 1 gallon of whole milk, same store you always go to, same brand you always grab, same price on the jug. You get it home, pour a glass for your kid, and 3 days later, before the date printed on the cap, it already smells off. You pour it down the drain and drive back to buy another one. Now look at this other jug. Same store, same size, same price per gallon, same 2 words on the front, whole milk. This one lasts nearly 2 weeks in your fridge, tastes clean on day 1 and day 10, and never once makes your kid make that face. 2 jugs that looked completely identical sitting in that same refrigerated case. 2 products that performed like they came from entirely different planets. And nothing on the front of either carton told you which one you were grabbing. We tested milk from more than a dozen major American stores, every single one judged by the same standard: freshness, taste consistency, how long it actually lasts once it is opened, and how honest the label is about what is really inside that jug. Most of them failed, not because the milk is dangerous. This is not a "your milk is making you sick" video. It failed because of what the label refuses to tell you. By the end of this video, you are going to understand 4 things the dairy industry hopes you never look into: the processing date, the pasteurization method, the co-op blend, and the cold chain gap. Once you understand these 4, you will never grab a jug of milk without checking it first. If this is the kind of content your family needs, hit subscribe right now. We put out this type of investigation every single week, and the carton is never going to do it for you. We are counting down from 10 to number 1, and I promise you, number 1 is a store sitting in your weekly shopping routine right now. Number 10, Meijer. You shop at Meijer because it is the big, friendly Midwest store that handles everything. One stop, reasonable prices, a familiar name you have trusted for years. That is a completely reasonable choice. Here is what most shoppers never think to check. Meijer's milk supply comes almost entirely from regional dairy co-ops, meaning the milk in that jug is pooled together from dozens of different farms before it ever reaches the processing plant. Some of those farms run tight, modern operations with excellent herd health and fast turnaround from cow to carton. Others are considerably less consistent. Once that milk gets blended into a single co-op tank, you have no way of knowing which farms contributed to the batch sitting in your cart. Here is what that means at your kitchen table. 1 week, the milk tastes clean and lasts the full 2 weeks printed on the label. The next week, same store, same shelf, same price. It turns slightly sour 4 or 5 days early, and nobody can tell you why. You did not store it wrong. You just grabbed a different blend of the same anonymous pool. Why skip it? Not because Meijer is a bad store, because the milk quality is a genuine coin flip driven entirely by which farms happen to feed into that week's co-op batch, and the label gives you 0 way to call it in advance. Number 9, Safeway. You shop at Safeway because it feels like a real established grocery chain, not a discount outlet, a place that should have real quality control on something as basic as milk. Here's the part that changes that assumption. Safeway's private label milk, sold under the Lucerne brand, is processed at a rotating set of third-party dairy plants depending on your region, and the specific plant supplying your local store can change without any noticeable difference on the label itself. This matters because different processing plants use different pasteurization temperatures and different bottling turnaround times, and both of those factors directly affect how long milk stays fresh once it is opened in your fridge. Here is what that means at home. You buy the same carton 2 months in a row, and one batch lasts 12 days after opening, while the other barely makes it to day 7. You assume your fridge temperature changed or you left it out too long. In reality, you were simply handed milk from a different regional plant with a different processing standard, and nothing on the jug ever told you that had happened. Why skip it? The brand name stays constant. The actual dairy plant behind it does not, and that inconsistency is exactly what shows up as unpredictable spoilage in your refrigerator. Number 8, Giant Eagle. You shop at Giant Eagle because everyone in your area swears by it, a trusted local name built over decades of loyalty. That kind of trust feels like it should mean something for a basic product like milk. Here is the reality behind that feeling. Giant Eagle's milk sourcing varies significantly by region within its own footprint, pulling from different regional dairies depending on which distribution center services your specific store. The stronger, more established stores in its core Pennsylvania and Ohio markets tend to get more consistent, fresher rotation. Stores further from that core territory sometimes receive milk that has already spent considerably more time in transit and cold storage before it ever reaches the shelf. Here is what that means at dinner. You pay the same price whether you are in the strong core market or the periphery, but the actual freshness clock on that jug can already be running down considerably faster in some locations than others, and the label carries the exact same printed date regardless. Why skip it? Freshness swings hard based purely on geography and distribution routing, and there is no way to tell from the jug itself how far that milk traveled before it landed in your cart. Number 7, Piggly Wiggly. You shop at Piggly Wiggly because it feels like a genuine old-fashioned hometown grocery store, the kind of place that surely still deals directly with local dairies. That nostalgia feels like a guarantee of quality. Here is the truth about that feeling. Most Piggly Wiggly locations are independently owned and franchised, meaning milk sourcing decisions are made store by store rather than through any single consistent national supply chain. Some independent owners genuinely do maintain relationships with smaller regional dairies. Many others simply buy whatever milk is cheapest and most available from the nearest large-scale distributor, exactly the same supply many national chains rely on. Here is what that means at the register. The charming small-town branding on the storefront tells you absolutely nothing reliable about what dairy actually produced the milk you are buying that week, and it can change entirely depending on which owner runs that particular location. Why skip it? Sourcing changes with every independent owner. Almost no location publishes where its milk actually comes from, and you are frequently paying for a feeling of local trust with zero actual proof behind it. Number 6, Food Lion. You shop at Food Lion because it is a normal, full-service grocery store, not a discount bin, not a closeout shop, a real grocery store. That feels like a reasonable baseline expectation for decent milk. Here is what is actually happening with that carton. Food Lion's milk supply chain leans heavily on ultra-pasteurization at several of its supplying plants, a process that heats milk to a considerably higher temperature than standard pasteurization, specifically to extend shelf life dramatically before the jug ever reaches the store. This is not inherently dangerous, but it does change the taste and texture of the milk noticeably compared to standard pasteurized milk, often producing a slightly cooked or flat flavor that many shoppers notice without understanding why. The label rarely distinguishes clearly between standard and ultra-pasteurized processing in a way an average shopper would catch while browsing the shelf. Here's what that means in your glass. You pour milk expecting the familiar taste you grew up with, and instead get something subtly different, longer lasting on the shelf, but noticeably altered in flavor. And nothing on the front of the carton warned you that the processing method itself had changed. Why skip it? The label tells you almost nothing about how the milk was actually processed, and that gap directly affects the taste sitting in your glass every single morning. Number 5, Save a Lot. You shop at Save a Lot because the price per gallon makes sense when you are feeding a family on a tight budget. That is a completely responsible decision. Here is what that price is actually buying. To hit that rock bottom shelf price, Save a Lot's milk supply chain is stripped down to the bare minimum at every stage. The cheapest available co-op sourcing, minimal cold chain redundancy during transport, and considerably less buffer time between processing and store delivery than higher priced chains maintain. Here is what that means at home. You bring home a gallon, and the printed date on the cap looks perfectly normal, but the actual usable freshness window after opening runs noticeably shorter than the same size jug from a full-price grocery chain, because the milk had already used up more of its shelf life simply sitting in transit and warehouse storage before it ever reached your store's refrigerated case. Why skip it? Bargain price? Bargain cold chain. The savings at the register are real, and so is the shortened window you actually get to use that milk once you bring it home. Stop. Before the next 4 stores, you need to understand something, because what comes next only makes sense once you know how milk actually changed in this country. Go back a few decades and milk was simple. Regional dairies processed and bottled milk close to where the cows were actually milked. and that milk reached your local grocery store within a day or two of leaving the farm. Then grocery chains consolidated, and the entire dairy supply chain consolidated right along with them. Massive regional co-ops and processing plants took over because they were faster, cheaper, and easier to manage at national scale. One plant could now supply hundreds of stores across multiple states simultaneously. Costs came down, the milk looked identical every single time on the shelf. From a pure business standpoint, it was brilliant. But something quiet got lost in that process. Today, a single jug of milk sold under a store's private label can be sourced from a rotating, regional pool of dozens of different dairy farms, processed at whichever plant happens to be running that week, and shipped hundreds of miles before it ever reaches your specific store. The label still says 2 words, whole milk, or 2%, or skim. It does not tell you which farms contributed to that batch, how long the milk actually spent in transit before processing, or which pasteurization method was used. Milk used to mean it came from a specific nearby herd of cows. Today, it often means it came from a supply chain. This is not a safety crisis. The milk is inspected and regulated. This is a consistency crisis. Convenience got dramatically better. Predictability got dramatically worse, and most shoppers have no idea the trade happened. Number 4, Dollar General Market. You stop at Dollar General because it is close, it is open late, and the price is right. Pure convenience, no surprises expected. At the deepest discount level, the milk supply is about as minimal as dairy retail gets. Sourced from whichever regional distributor offers the lowest cost that quarter, with essentially no consistency guarantee from one delivery to the next. Why skip it? This one is not a shock. Nobody expects a dedicated dairy relationship at a dollar store, and it lands here because the jug gives you absolutely nothing to work with. No dairy origin, no processing detail, no story at all. Number 3, Aldi. You shop at Aldi because everyone says the quality is secretly great for the price, and the fair part of that is true. Aldi's milk can genuinely surprise you with how fresh it tastes for the cost. But here is the distinction that matters. Cheap and inconsistent are not mutually exclusive. Aldi rotates its dairy suppliers regionally, depending on cost negotiations, meaning the specific dairy behind your carton this month may be completely different from the one behind it 3 months ago, even though the packaging looks identical every single time. Why skip it? Rotating suppliers, minimal labeling detail, and no dedicated dairy counter to ask. A store millions now shop weekly, selling milk you simply cannot trace back to a consistent source. Number 2, Target. You grab milk at Target because you were already there picking up everything else. You trust Target with your home goods, your kids' clothes, your household supplies, and you assume the milk in the grocery section got that same level of care. Here is the gap. Target's grocery section was built around convenience shopping, not around dedicated dairy expertise. The milk is almost always sourced through large national distribution partners with minimal region-specific sourcing information available on the shelf. Why skip it? A smaller dedicated dairy selection, slower shelf turnover compared to a true grocery chain, and pricing that rarely beats a specialized grocery store. When a retailer this large treats its dairy section as an afterthought, families buy milk without ever suspecting how little dedicated attention went into sourcing it. Number 1, Walmart. You buy milk at Walmart because everyone does. The price is right, the name is everywhere. A company this massive could not possibly cut corners on something this basic. That trust is exactly what this ranking is about. Walmart sells more milk than any other retailer in the United States, and the overwhelming majority of it moves through the company's own massive centralized dairy processing operations, built specifically to supply thousands of stores at the lowest possible cost. Generic regional sourcing, minimal farm-level transparency, and delivery schedules optimized for cost efficiency rather than maximum freshness at the shelf. Here is what that means at your table. More American families pour this milk every single week than any other product on this list, and it is some of the most anonymous milk in the entire test. You are trusting the name to stand in for every piece of information the label will not give you. Why skip it? The Walmart name guarantees a price and a parking lot. It does not guarantee you can see anything real about which farms, which plant, or how long that milk actually traveled before it reached your fridge. And that gap between reputation and transparency is exactly why it sits at number 1. 2 home tests you can run tonight. Test 1, the label scan. Pick up any carton and check 3 things. Does it name a specific dairy or region? Or does it just say fresh dairy, pure and simple? Does it specify standard pasteurization or ultra pasteurization anywhere on the label? Does it give any indication of when it was actually bottled, not just the sell-by date? A carton that refuses to answer those 3 questions has already given you its answer. Test 2, the open jar taste and smell test. Pour a small glass the day you open a new jug and note the taste. Repeat that exact same test every 3 days without changing anything else in your routine. Milk that stays clean, tasting through the full printed window, you bought something genuinely fresh. Milk that turns noticeably flat or sour well before that date, you paid full price for a shortened shelf life the label never warned you about. The cold storage fix, the one method that beats all of this here, is the most useful thing in this entire video. It works on any milk from any store on this list. That early spoilage happens because temperature fluctuation during the trip from store to home and then storage placement inside your own fridge accelerates bacterial growth far faster than most people realize. You can beat it with 4 steps. 1. Make the dairy aisle your very last stop before checkout, minimizing the time milk spends warming up in your cart. 2. Get milk into your refrigerator within 30 minutes of leaving the store whenever possible. 3. Store milk on an interior shelf, never in the door, because the door experiences the largest and most frequent temperature swings every time it opens. 4. Keep your fridge itself at or below 38 degrees Fahrenheit consistently, checked with an actual thermometer rather than trusting the dial. Fast transport, correct shelf placement, consistent cold temperature. Even the most anonymous milk on this list lasts noticeably longer with this routine. Now you know what to avoid and how to store whatever you already have. Here is what to actually put in your cart. 3 stores earned their place on this list, not through marketing, not through price, through actual transparency, giving you back the information the rest of the industry quietly decided was not worth printing on the label. Clean store number 3, Publix. Publix earns this spot because its dairy department backs up the store's overall reputation instead of hiding behind it. Publix maintains tighter, more consistent regional dairy relationships than most large chains, with noticeably faster turnover between processing and shelf placement at most locations. In the glass, that difference shows up directly. Cleaner taste, longer usable freshness after opening, because milk handled with a shorter, more consistent supply chain simply holds up better once it reaches your fridge, why it earns the spot. Tighter regional dairy relationships, faster shelf turnover than most large chains, and noticeably more consistent taste from one purchase to the next. Clean store number 2, Whole Foods. If this list were ranked purely on sourcing standards, Whole Foods would win without much contest. Whole Foods enforces considerably stricter supplier standards for its dairy section, including clearer organic certification, more specific regional sourcing information printed directly on the label, and tighter restrictions on the use of added hormones across its supplying dairies. That is genuine, verifiable transparency at grocery scale, and almost no other major retailer in the country offers it as consistently. So why is it number 2 instead of number 1? 2 honest reasons that have nothing to do with quality. First, Whole Foods milk is consistently the most expensive option in town. And for a family buying milk multiple times a week, that premium adds up fast. Second, Whole Foods locations are concentrated in urban and suburban areas, meaning millions of American families simply do not have one within reasonable driving distance. A gold standard you cannot reach on a regular Tuesday is not the practical best pick for most people. Why it earns the spot? Clear organic and regional labeling, stricter supplier standards than almost any competitor, and the most transparent dairy sourcing available in mainstream retail. Period. Clean store number 1, Costco. This is the one that is going to start a comment section argument, and it deserves to be number 1 anyway. Here is what Costco does that almost no other store at this scale does. Costco's Kirkland Signature Milk is sourced through a small, tightly managed group of dedicated dairy suppliers rather than a sprawling, constantly rotating regional co-op pool. And that consistency shows up directly in taste and shelf life from one purchase to the next. There is a detail Costco members talk about quietly. Once they learn it, the company's bulk purchasing model means milk moves through the supply chain and onto shelves considerably faster than smaller retailers managing dozens of tiny, less predictable orders, which means the jug in your cart has typically spent noticeably less time sitting in transit and storage before reaching you. Add genuinely competitive bulk pricing, aggressive date management that pulls product before it gets anywhere close to actual spoilage, and a return policy that stands behind the product without hassle, and you have the best complete package in this entire test. Why it earns the top spot. Tightly managed, consistent supplier relationships, faster movement through the supply chain than smaller retailers, aggressive freshness date management, and a return policy that genuinely backs the product, combined with bulk pricing that makes consistent quality affordable for a real family's weekly routine. How to protect your family starting tonight. Go check your fridge right now. Any carton that gives you no dairy origin information at all, treat it as anonymous. Anything showing an early sour smell well before its printed date, do not force it. Trust your nose over the label. Anything from the stores in the bottom half of this list with no clear sourcing information. Factor that into how quickly you plan to use it. When you shop next, favor labels that specify a dairy region or processing detail over vague marketing language like farm fresh with nothing else to back it up. Make dairy your last stop in every shopping trip and get it refrigerated fast. And whatever you buy from whatever store, use the cold chain routine, fast transport, interior shelf placement, consistent fridge temperature. Even the most anonymous milk on this list performs better when the handling is right. From the co-op blend nobody can see into to the famous name standing in for every piece of information the label refuses to print, we have laid out exactly what is hiding inside one of the most ordinary items in your weekly cart. A product where 2 jugs on the same refrigerated shelf can perform like completely different products, and the label barely whispers which is which. But here is what changed in the last few minutes. You are no longer the shopper the dairy case can fool. You understand the language now. The processing date, the pasteurization method, the co-op blend, the cold chain gap. You can pick up any carton in any store in any town and read it for exactly what it is. You came to this video to find out which store sells the best milk. You are leaving knowing how to judge any carton yourself at any store in any town for the rest of your life. That beats a ranking. A ranking goes out of date. Knowing how to read the dairy case never does. If this video changed how you look at that refrigerated case, hit the like button right now. It genuinely helps this channel reach more families who are buying anonymous milk without knowing it. And if you are not subscribed yet, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we run this kind of test every single week on the food your family eats. Which store shocked you most? Drop it in the comments below and share this with someone who bought a jug of Walmart milk this week and has no idea what is actually inside it.